Well, Donald Trump heading west and facing some big hurdles. Voters heading to the polls in just 2 weeks in the heavily Latino states of New Mexico and California. But a new Fox News Latino poll released just last week shows Clinton leading Trump among Latino voters 62% to 23%. So can Trump change the mind of minority voters? Here to weigh in, Fox News contributor and radio talk show host Tammy Bruce, as well as Republican strategist Kathy Lynn Taylor. Thank you both for getting up early with us this morning.
Good morning, everybody.
So let's start with that. You know, Trump heads west. He faces some big hurdles. Can he change the minds of these minority voters? Tammy, I'll start with you.
You know, I think he can. He's actually already doing better than Romney did by the time of the November election in 2012. So Trump hasn't even made, obviously, an overt effort to win them over. We've not even really moved into the general yet. So he's got more than enough time. So there's already been, when you look at those numbers, a response to the overall economic message. I think that's going to be, as it is for most Americans, the more important message, regardless of your ancestry, regardless if you're hyphenated to some degree, that it's about your family, it's about jobs, it's about everybody being lifted up. Then once we can get on our feet, then we can maybe perhaps fight about some of the boutique issues, even though immigration, as we know, affects the wage level, it stagnates wages, it affects the availability of jobs, and that affects everyone. So that is going to appeal to Americans in general, separate from the identity politics of Hispanics.
Well, he does have to do something, though. We can take a look at this poll right here. It was a 2016 Fox News Latino poll. The presidential preference, Clinton 62% over Trump with just 23% in that particular poll.
This is true, but you have to take these polls with a grain of salt, because what we've learned in this election season is that the polls aren't always necessarily right. And to Tammy's point, regardless of race or religion or creed, what's universal across minorities, across whites, across all segments, all classes, is the dissatisfaction. And so for some, it may be making a decision of going to a really good doctor with maybe not such an ideal bedside manner. But nonetheless, we have seen Trump carry minorities in several primaries. And so California will be an interesting test. It's not an open primary, but it may be a good test of, can he bring in these minorities? It's a pretty blue state. Can he bring over some Democratic voters? And that'll become maybe the first indication of where this is going in that direction.
In the general election,
that's
specifically.
Right.
Well, Trump to begin vetting potential VPs. That might be a way that he would do this. He did meet with Corker today. So what qualifies a VP candidate for him? What qualities would he be looking for? Tammy?
Well, you know, I would suggest that he reject this notion of identity politics. We've been told, like, maybe it should be Susana Martinez, which it sounds like that's not going to happen, or a Hispanic, or someone to appeal to a certain group. But we've even found that Hillary's had to drop that line because it's not resonating. Specifically, I think, to my point about the economy and what's important these days. For Mr. Trump, it's going to have to be a few things. One, it's going to have to be somebody who understands Congress, who can deal with legislation, who can maneuver both parties. Trump, I think, realizes that that's his weakness, so he knows he needs to bring someone in regarding that. Mr. Trump will be the oldest elected president. He needs to have somebody who is younger in the event, God forbid, something were to happen. He also needs somebody who's going to be loyal to him, so that the voter knows that if something were to happen to Mr. Trump, or when it comes to his team member, that they are also committed to that agenda that we will have voted in. It also should be someone, as a result, I think it's not necessarily youth that matters, but a sense from the American people that that person could in fact be the next president, that there's enough space for that, and I do think that that's where age definitely comes in as well. It doesn't, I don't, as a feminist, at this point, I don't care if it's a woman. Your analogy about the bedside manner in a doctor is great. I want to get better, and then we can deal with some of these other larger issues.
Kathy?
That's right. I agree with a lot of what Tammy said. Look, he needs a yin for his yang. He needs someone who's very diplomatic, both domestically and abroad, who can really counter his temperament. He needs someone who speaks his language and knows how to get things done and wants to get things done. And that's where Senator Corker is interesting, because he came from the construction industry. He was an executive. He built a business. He understands Trump's language. So someone like that is reasonable to think about. And then he needs someone who can get things done and understands at least two of the three ways policy gets made in Washington.
So experience is what you think.
Experience, like executive branch versus congressional versus in state.
I think the military and I think that experience might be important too.
Yeah.
That's got to be considered maybe.
Well, hold that thought because we will talk about it more. You
Good.
all will be back